Hey you're watching a clip from the DynamiteGizmo podcast. This is not the full episode, but if you want to see the full episode, make sure to click the link in the description. And remember, like, comment, subscribe. Do it now. Here's the clip. I want to talk about the BMF title. We just saw it happen this weekend. We just saw it be defended for the first time ever. But let's run through the BMF, shall we? I want to talk about it. I want you to know about it. Because it's an interesting thing. Where did it come from? What even is it? Where did it start? Why is it still around? Like many UFC fans, I found myself thinking about the BMF title at least once a year since 2023. It's one of those weird, unofficial belts that's somehow still lingering around, floating somewhere between spectacle and significance. And let's be honest, those of us who followed the BMF story from the beginning know that it was never meant to be a real title. It was always a promotional stunt, something flashy to add hype, not something grounded in merit or rankings. Even in the most recent BMF title fight between Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier, the belt felt like an afterthought. The real moment was Poirier's retirement. His third fight against Holloway, and the Louisiana crowd sending him off. The BMF title, it was just there. There are no official rules for how the BMF title is defended or lost. It's only on the line if the UFC says it is. There's no ranking system, no contender ladder, no mandatory defenses. So how did we even get here? Let's go back to the beginning, okay? The BMF title didn't come from a boardroom or press related. It came from pure trash talk, pure hype. In August of 2019, Jorge Masvidal delivered a flying knee that knocked out Ben Askren in just 5 seconds at UFC 239, still the fastest KO in UFC history. That moment sent Masvidal's popularity into orbit. And just a side note, Ben Askren's doing good. He's on his way home now. Fucking rights, buddy. So anyway, after that knockout, just weeks later, Nate Diaz returned to the UFC and beat Anthony Pettis at UFC 241. And at the post-fight press conference, Diaz claimed he was the baddest motherfucker in the game. And he called out Masvidal directly. Meanwhile, Masvidal had just recently competed in a grappling match with Pettis, which ended in a draw. So the timing of Diaz calling him out right after beating the same guy was perfect. And with all the fan hype, the UFC leaned into this. They created a custom BMF belt, Baddest Motherfucker, based off of what Nate Diaz claimed he was, just for this fight. And announced Diaz versus Masvidal as the headliner of UFC 244 at Madison Square Garden for the BMF title. So then we jump ahead to the fight itself, November 2nd, 2019, Madison Square Garden, New York. The fight itself was one-sided. Masvidal dominated Diaz with striking and elbows and body shots and brutal head kick that dropped Nate early. And after 3 rounds, the doctor called it due to a deep cut over Diaz's eye. And Jorge Masvidal became the first ever BMF champion. And then Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson came out, wrapped the belt around Masvidal's waist, and Dana White, at that time, claimed it was a one and done. And spoiler alert, it wasn't. Okay? So then we jump ahead. Not yet. Well, between Masvidal held the title from 2019 to 2023, but he never defended it. In fact, he lost 3 straight fights in a row. Twice to Kamaru Usman and once to Colby Covington. But because the BMF belt wasn't officially on the line, it stayed with Masvidal. Now, if the title hadn't been labeled one and done, you could argue Usman should have became the new BMF, after beating Masvidal. But the UFC wasn't treating the belt like a real title. At least not yet. And by mid-2023, Masvidal had retired after a loss to Gilbert Burns. And then the BMF belt was now technically vacant. So then came UFC 291, a rematch between Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje, whose 2018 war was a Fight of the Year candidate. The UFC decided this matchup was worthy of the BMF belt. Why? Because both guys are brawlers. They stand and bang, as the kids like to say. That's an unwritten criteria, some would say, needed for this title. And they fought, and Gaethje won via second-round head kick KO, becoming the new BMF. Dana White confirmed the belt was officially back and staying in rotation. Then came one of the greatest moments in UFC history. Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje at UFC 300 for the BMF belt. Leading up to this event, fans were skeptical. Conor McGregor had pulled out, the card was in flux, Max versus Gaethje felt like a last-minute filler, but it turned into absolute pure fucking magic. With 10 seconds left in round 5, Holloway pointed to the center of the octagon, signaling Gaethje to throw down. Max was already winning on the scorecards, yet risked it all in a final exchange. They brawled extremely hard, and with 1 second left, Holloway landed a clean KO that dropped Gaethje face first. It was unbelievable. The crowd went absolutely fucking ballistic, and just like that, Max Holloway became the new BMF. Many now consider it to be the greatest knockout in UFC history, not just for the finish, but for the moment itself, okay? It was UFC 300. It was in Vegas. There was 1 second left in the final round. It was against Justin Gaethje on the biggest card of the year, and it was even International Fight Week, wasn't it? Or maybe that was 303. I can't remember. It was a cinematic ending to a fight people thought didn't belong on the card. And after that, even BMF skeptics had to admit the belt finally meant something. Then came Max versus Ilia Topuria for the featherweight belt. Ilia handed Max his first knockdown of his UFC career and finished him by KO. So does Topuria get the BMF belt too? No, because it wasn't declared a BMF fight. Max lost, but still kept the title just like Masvidal did before. But then that raises the question, should the BMF title automatically transfer hands when the holder loses regardless of whether the UFC promotes it as a BMF fight? If you ask me, that's where the belt loses some legitimacy, because now we've seen Holloway lose by knockout and still defend the title a few months later against Poirier at UFC 318. He wins, keeps the belt, and now there's talk of a rematch with Topuria. And if Max wins, he'd be the lightweight champ and the BMF champ. But if Topuria wins again, and the BMF title isn't on the line, he walks away with just the lightweight title. We're at a point where the BMF feels like a pick and choose kind of title. You can lose as long as the UFC didn't declare it official. That's a little messy. And if you look at the actual lineal path of the BMF in which it should have taken, if we're following the same standards as every other belt, it should have gone like this. Jorge beat Nate, Usman beat Jorge, Leon beat Usman, Belal beat Leon, and JDM beat Belal. So if we're getting really technical with this, JDM is actually the current BMF title holder, as crazy as that sounds. Now, I've thought about this, and you know what? I don't think the BMF should take a lineal path. I think it's okay to keep going the way we're doing with this. It's not meant to be an official title. It's kind of just like a spectacle event that takes place when it's needed. If you want the official shit, then we have the titles, the lightweight title, the heavyweight, all those titles, right? I think it's okay to let the BMF be the way it is right now. But what do you think? Do you think the BMF title is just total bullshit? Should the BMF belt be on the line every time the holder of the BMF fights? Should the UFC set rules for how it's defended or passed on? Or do you like the chaos, that it only exists when the story makes sense? Let me know what you think in the comments, because whether you love it or hate it, the BMF title is still here, and for now, it belongs to Max Holloway.
Tap here to watch the full episode of the Dynamite Gizmo podcast.